like to say hi again to everyone. I'm Mert Can KURUM, who is the CEO of Ruby Games and at the same time I'm the founder. Today I want to introduce Ruby Games to you, and then I will be talking about the prototyping processes while developing games and what are the roadmap we follow. And actually, I will briefly mention about Ruby Games. There are a few important games for us. Link Drift is one of them. It was the first released game of us, and we applied the quick prototyping methods for this for the first time. It was launched in 2018, and in the fourth month of our foundation, we released it actually. And then during the time elapsed for 2 years, we worked on different games, and at the end of 1.5 years, now we decided to publish our own games. And while publishing our own games, one of the major ones, one was assessing, and there are 350 million downloads until now, and it was the most downloaded game in the first quarter of 2020. And of course, as a company from coming from the studio background and publishing its own games, it was a great achievement for us. And we continued the prototyping games. And in the second quarter of 2020, we published another 5 games. And while producing the games, we also used the testing of quick prototyping. Now there are many games, and we continue with the prototyping and test and publish those ourselves. And during this publication, actually, we use repeat prototyping. And how do we apply this in Ruby games, and what is repeat prototyping? Let me talk about this. In hyper casual world, repeat prototyping is one of the most important factors because fast development is important because when the users strategy is reached, the cost of achieving the users is important because when it is low, the game is more accessible. Therefore, it was our priority. Therefore, before developing a game, accessibility of the game to the user is important. Low cost is important. We are all estimating this at the very beginning because for some time after reaching a point about the game, on one side, the cheap games, the cheap CPIs do not attract the attention of the users, and all your efforts are become wasted. Therefore, the 3 or 4 weeks that you struggled hard become nothing. But in hyper casual, we will be talking about shorter times at the side of the hyper casual part. Actually, there are many extra things that you shouldn't do. It actually increases our development costs, and it reduces our motivation. Therefore, rapid prototyping is seeing the potential of the game at an early stage and turning the development phase of a game from 3 weeks to 1 week is very motivating for us. And in hyper casual, in order to be successful at a game, we need to test a game as much as possible. Therefore, rapid prototyping ensure this. Therefore, it's very valuable, and our strategy is based on this. And what is the problem here? What is the matter? Why did we need rapid prototyping? Actually, there are a few um, problems about rapid prototyping. One of the basic ones is the human factor. You work on a game as a team for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you see that it doesn't attract the attention of people, and all your work is actually becomes nothing. You sacrifice your time. Actually, you spend time, you work day and night, and this demotivates you because there are no users. But when the time is shortened, within 3 weeks, you test actually more than one game, even 3 games instead of one, with rapid prototyping. Therefore, it is useful, and therefore it becomes more motivating for us. Therefore, when we see that problem, we decided to solve it. And due to the sector, there's a great competition, and the developer rates is high, especially at the hyper casual side. When we see from the marketing part, then you need to increase the number of tests actually. Then you need to shorten your processes depending on the requirements of the market. Today, what kind of a solution we have come up with, and what can do further? What can we do further? What are we doing in Ruby? Actually, our solution is MVC. It's actually quite familiar, but it is unique to us at the same time. Actually, MVC is minimum viable casual, and visually it's not a product, it's just a visual, a marketing product. It is. Our aim is this. You can see in on the photo that there is a visual of the traffic police, but there is no police in real terms. But seeing that post, seeing that visual makes people focus on the traffic rules, and actually quite similar to this. We have some time within a very short time, and we come up with a product, and rapidly we put that product under marketing testing. So within a very short time we understand the potential of the game, whether it will be liked by the users or not. Therefore, these are the first phases actually. After that test, actually there are a few more tests for the same product, but our actual purpose is the first test to understand the potential of the game. This is a SCAT method. There is a product, and you start to develop a product. First, you make up the skeleton, and then you put on the other layers, and then you reach up to the final stage of the product. And we will focus on the first skeleton phase of the product, and we do our test in this skeleton phase, and then we continue with the second and third phases. And after the third phase, the game is released and revised if necessary. Actually, this process is made up of 3 stages. On the first day, we do brainstorming to come up with ideas. On the second day, actually, we develop the game, and on the third day, uh, which actually lasts for 3 days, we prepare the creatives and develop the variations of the game. Actually, on the first day, we come together with the developers, and we come up with ideas. There are all many techniques for this. Actually, you can get clues from other games. You can come with different ideas. You can take inspiration by other events on the news, for example. And then development stage comes, which lasts for 3 days. And there is a preliminary research for the identification of the needs for the project. And these days are quite critical for us. And actually, we do not want these 5 days to be longer or shorter. Actually, when we want to compare these 5 days with the competitors, because we want to develop our benchmarks. After developing those benchmarks, we we decide about the future of the game easier. Actually, this has been a process which is completed within 1 week. And in the idea developing part, as I said, developers come together, they do brainstorming, and then they develop a game for 3 days. And in this process, the actually main criteria for the game are determined, and the main mechanics are developed, and then creatives are decided. And in the following 3 days, the developer actually develops the product actually. And in the second phase, actually, there are certain rules. Actually, these are not rules, but certain decisions made by us. One of them is don't make it, fake it. Actually, it is not completing something, but to find short ways, cutouts actually. And we want we want the shortest possible way here, and it is bug free. This stage is bug free, so we do not want the bugs to be removed at this stage. These are not important at that point because, for example, that character in the game may fall down, but we do not want to see the bottom where the character falls down. Therefore, it's not important for us. And of course, there will be feedbacks to be used here. We need to add them, but apart from them, this extra properties, extra features such as detailed coloring effects animations are not wanted here. There will be no UI or no polishing in this stage, and they will also use as a store if it is possible during this stage, because they will also fasten the process, and here our standards will be strengthened. Within these 3 working days, this project is developed, and of course, by taking part in this process, all the developers are cooperating. And on the last day, actually, unlike the other companies, the creatives are prepared by the developers, because from the very beginning of the game, they are continue with the process, and they are working together with the marketing team, and the creatives are developed by them, and they are also included in the process. Actually, one of the most important highlights here is to show the action and the highlighting points of the game, and this is a complete process. And optimizing this process is also important. There are many games we test, they are uploaded, the test is started, and these are repeatedly done. Therefore, we use some automation here. There are a few tools we do for this. One of them is our dashboard. Actually, the video playing, the game playing is recorded by friends and uploaded on this dashboard, and the system automatically tests this over the dashboard. And in some games, we also upload the games to the web store and uh, app store, and building the game, sending the game take too much time. Therefore, we actually connected it to automation as well. All the all the game and its information are sent to the app store, and then we build the game and publish it in the app store. When all these are completed, we can say that we have now a system established to come up with new games every 5 or 6 days. Actually, we are testing 6 games a week. Its meaning is this. And of course, when you have such a structure, one of the most important thing is to build standards. Actually, the repeated things and time-consuming things are to be eliminated. Therefore, we need standards. What are the standardized ones? First, shaders. Actual shaders are used in every game. The colorings are used. Therefore, these are automized and standardized. If we are to use UI, the standard based. There are some standard based projects for the UIs, and actually, there is a starter menu in every game, and these are actually the same for many of the games, and these are quite stable actually. Therefore, instead of repeating the same for every game, we standardize these UIs, and also there are some common fixes standardized for the bugs. Actually, these are also applied for the common used assets as well. All are actually mean common fixes so that developers easily fix them together with the animations without spending much time on this. Actually, a few examples can be given. In order to visualize this, I like to show you one example of this process. What were the successful results, and what was it at the beginning, and what is it in the end? The left on the left hand side, you can see the older version of this. Actually, it is a very simple thing. You hit the layers with the ball and these fall down. There was not a menu for this game, but we just set the menu and it attracted attention of the users. After seeing that, we improved the game. There are many levels and the ball is customized, and there are many layers of the game now on the right hand side. And of course, after developing the right hand side version of the game and after marketing, there must be a fail. However, as we did the research beforehand, before releasing the game, we already know the result. We have a Dr. Carey called game. The idea behind this was to attract attention to the soul of people. Actually, we prepared a prototype for this. Actually, there is no character. There is just food. Excuse me, and it also took 5 days. And after testing this, we saw that the cost is really low, and we worked for a few more days on this, and then we published it with very low cost, and it was published in the US, and actually we access to the users in the US. In the US, we reached many users. 100,000 users. It was one of the actually most successful examples. Most of our games are published with these processes, and in 3 or 4 days actually there are many more games tested. Actually, the success lies behind the testing process, and I have already said, but for those tests, and if we to work for a month, for example, the cost would be higher, and a tiny number of games would be released, and we would be slower. And therefore, repeat prototyping is really good in order to be successful in hyper casual. And actually, most major publishers or game studios are also investing in paid prototyping fields. And that's all from my side for today. Actually, we can continue with the question and answers. and continue in this way.
Evet, sorularınızı Q&A bölümüne ya da chat'e yazabilirsiniz.
You can write your questions in the Q&A or chat.
Soruları olanlar varsa.
Ben de açayım yandan.
O zaman ilk önce ben bir soru sorayım.
I
Sunum
have a question.
düşündüğüm. Ee, Haftada bir oyun dediniz.
You said that
Developers.
one game a week for
Haftada bir
every
oyun
game
demek game
developer
development hani
producing a game
kreatif
per week.
stres oluşturmuyor mu ya da
Is
belli yemekli
does it
yapıyorsak
require a
haftada bir
creative
oyun
skillness, or is there an adverse effect for this because it's quite tiring and
bunun
stressful?
hani etkileri var mı peki
And what are
eklenti
the
olarak
side effects of
tekrar
this?
ediyorlar gibisini hani açabilir misiniz acaba?
Can you explain it, please?
Şöyle çok da önemli bir konu bu. Çok da
It's very important actually, and we have problems in that respect. Let me give an example. In the 5 days
şu 5 günlük
process,
ilerleme sürecinin aslında bir aşaması yani birinci
actually, in the first and third steps, actually, it is time for the developers to rest. Actually, during brainstorming, actually, developers rest in that period, and then and on the third day during the creative development, the developers also rest because the main work is on the marketers.
bu şeyleri analiz edip bu tarzda yaşanacak olayları analiz edip aralara belli dinlenme süreçleri koyuyoruz. Buna göre ilerletiyoruz ama burada en önemli noktalardan biri kişinin kararı yapacağı oyunu
The most important thing here is to make the necessary decisions, make the right decisions. So since the developer is constantly involved in this process, they see this as their own product. So it increases their motivation, this is what we saw. And to give a few examples, in our former methods, there were 5 developers working on a game. They had specific tasks. There were projects. They worked on them for 4 or 5 weeks. Then when the game there was a problem with the game, nobody owned the problem. It wasn't about the developer, and they thought everything they did was in vain. So they were less interested in the subsequent phases of the process. So we tried to make it so that developers own the whole process. Thank you. I guess we have a few questions. Yes, we have 3 questions in the chat box and other questions in the Q&A box. Aziz Berkay has a question. Are you planning to produce larger scale mobile games in the future? Yes. In 2021, we have this issue about filling our GVs, and we think the future will be bright for the mobile industry, and we will distribute our interest in other spaces. We will use the same system in the hyper casual system, and we will use these new prototyping methods in hyper casual. And we are working on 2 games of Antrasas, and so we will do post-launch for these games in 2021. So we will be focusing on retention. There will be some meta features in the game, and also there will be some hyper casual projects that are planned for 2021. And we don't plan any bigger projects. Sometimes we think about some other companies have plans to produce games for Steam, but we don't have such plans. It depends on the level actually, because how many levels do you have for a prototype? That is the question. So
zaman 5 tane de limitliyoruz. 5 creative istiyoruz bir prototip.
We want 5 creatives for a prototype, and each of these prototypes, each of these creatives have a different meaning, and we prepare different level if we need other, if we have other needs, but this is not to offer a better experience to the user in the prototype. Unity game engine, yes, we use Unity because we are able to asset store tools, and the Unity community in Turkey is quite big. And we can learn this better. Ahmet says greetings from Tiplay. After the first testing, how do you manage the development process, development time for games? Do you continue testing during the development? Well, after the testing, a more stressful process starts for us. For about 4 or 6 weeks, we have a project planned, and the whole team, everyone on the team is included in the game. We work to develop the game. This takes about 4 or 6 weeks. And during this process, there is a possibility that the CPI may change. It may be because of us or because of the changes in the industry. So we continue testing at all times, but generally after a project is started, we take the whole process until the end. But there are some problems occasionally. After the game is released, we may not be able to see the results of the tests, so we need to do occasional tests to modify things during the development process. And also we need to do a good project planning, and we develop the project in 4 or 6 weeks. To give an example from this game, we developed the first prototype in 5 days, and until the time from us sending the first code to the game becoming number 1 in the US was only 29 days. We are trying to shorten that duration actually. What we recommend to improve ourselves to become a programmer in a big gaming company, knowing many programming languages, developing as many games as possible, or getting certificates. Well, I look at the ECAP account and your project and your previous projects that you worked on. These are my priorities when hiring. We look at your account, the traces of your account at GitHub, and we give a case, an assignment to the candidate, and we expect them to interpret that case. And knowing too many programming languages is not very important. Instead, you may try to learn the basic principles to improve the infrastructure. It can be a better idea because you can also learn the programming language as you need during the process. So keeping your foundation very strong can be more meaningful for you. So thinking more algorithmically, learning basic software principles, knowing geometry and physics. These are more important than knowing many programming languages. How do you test the MVCs? Can you measure CPI via MVC? Yes, not 100%, but there are some different tests that we do. We are trying to renew it all the time because you cannot understand CPI by looking at a video. We do estimates using different methods. There is the CPR testing. You direct it to a different game, but the testing, you use the same testing on a different game. This is one method. There is the fake app store. There is a website that looks like an app store. People go there and you check if they click the get button and you count how many clicks you get. So you can use these methods. You can do tests on Facebook. I mean, you can start an advertisement campaign on Facebook and you can look at the viewing time, the viewing count of the video. You can analyze all the data to understand the feedback. But you cannot always understand CPI 100%. You can only make an interpretation whether CPI is good or bad. When you test the game, do you only do the CTR campaign or you use the CPI campaign on App Store? We do both, but there is this phenomenon of copying. When we first started in 2018, this was not like this. We were able to publish the game and monitor the reaction of the users, but it's not like this. Everyone is copying from each other. So we are trying to be as discreet as possible. We update our pages. We don't upload our games to the App Store. And when the CPI is very good, we support it with our marketing power. But of course, at times we do CPI campaigns at App Store to see if everything matches. Are you planning to produce any high budget games? I think it can be one level higher than hyper casual. Yes, we can do that. How can you manage to come up with 6 ideas every week? Does it only came from the imagination of game designers or developers, or do you have other resources? This is important because we follow the trends very well. Ahmet does this very well. We look at analyze this. We look at the players, and we have specific channels for that. We look at the new games that are released. So the industry is going to a specific point. When there is a profitable game, everyone starts doing similar games. So you can get an idea about what will happen. But this is not our first to-go solution. When there is a very popular game that sets the trend, it gets the bigger slice of the cake. Can you hear me, by the way? Because I think the battery on my earpods are running low. Yes, they get a bigger share of the cake. Let me change my earpods. So the clones of that game are less profitable. So game developers and designers and marketing team, they are all supposed to input some ideas, because that way we can get better ideas. So we are trying to create a pool of ideas. The game designer checks whether these ideas were tested before, what are the risks that we may encounter. So game designers do not just come up with ideas. Soon we will be releasing a game. It is based on an idea of a game developer. It's a unique design idea.
Mertcan Bey, isterseniz ben soruları tam olarak okuyayım, size öyle cevap vereyim.
If you like, I can read out the questions and you can answer. Burak Yavuz asks, what are your recommendations for global marketing for individual developers?
Tamam, global marketing noktasında tavsiyeleriniz nelerdir? Oyunun globalde daha görünür kılınabilmesi için
What should be the things that we should do in the store or the social platforms to make the game more visible in the global scale? Well, everything I have told you is about being more visible in those stores. So marketability is important, because when you get cheap users, this means that when you launch a campaign in Facebook and you get cheap users and everyone clicks on it, it means that your product is interesting for people. And when you have that product, you can have a bigger audience and you can improve your ranking in the stores. So in terms of marketing, what you can do in the game, you can do creative testing. You should come up with new creatives and test them on the released game so that you can stay on the higher ranking in the store. So we don't care about organic load because we get paid installs and they don't work with hyper casual. And in testing, does the download count matter or viewing count matter? But post-download testing, in post-download testing, playtime is important. There are many things that are important. And after the first testing, we publish an ad for our games. And we look at the LTV, the cohorted amount of money you get from the users. It shows the retention, it includes the retention, the view time, the play time. So you can compare LTV with your investment and you can see whether the game is profitable. Gizem Dayıcık asks, how can you foresee the success of a game? What is the correlation between the efforts you put into a game and its success? Well, we have a lot of testing and NVC testing process. We talked about this, and if we are doing a CPR testing, of course, this is not 100% true, but we can say that this is 5%. There is a 5% likelihood that this is interesting. So we have the CPC, cost per click, and we have the cost per view and many other criteria. You have to analyze them. So this is not a very short topic. You should just try and see. I cannot give you an exact number, but a successful game gives you a feeling, and there is a correlation between the efforts you put into a game and its success. As long as you do hyper casual, you cannot foresee how many of your projects will succeed. In 2020 June, we released 2 games in 1 month, but sometimes we cannot release any games for months. So it depends on your ideas, on the conditions in the market. So this is a stressful area that can only be borne by bigger companies. Buildbox, Godox, and other open source engines. Are you planning to use them? Are you looking at these engines? Actually, there are some companies which use these engines, game designers and the developers who are interested in hyper casual. They are using these tools, but instead of investing them, we invest in Unity, because when we succeed, we can continue to develop it using Unity. So Unity is more important for us. This is just one process. And for one process, hiring someone who is expert in that does not make sense for us. And another reason we choose Unity is using building framework. We have a system that is used in all games. It is created in Unity. We use this in second step during the fast release of the game. We use the event systems, advertisement systems, notification systems in a library. When we put this in the game, the games are ready for to be published. So since we use that library, we have to use Unity for development. So we don't look at other tools.
Enes Tuncer'in sorusu.
Enes
burada
Tuncer
CPI
asks,
testinden gelen değer hangi aralıklarda devam etmeye değer buluyorsunuz?
what are the intervals that would make sense in CPI testing? I think the question, I get this question right. What should be the intervals that we should use in CPI testing? Well, it depends on the guts of the game designers. And if in the game, on the potential retention side, you see a good potential, for example, why CPI is important? Because there is an amount of money that you can make with this game, and that money should be higher than CPI. And if the amount of money that you will make can be estimated, you can set the CPI accordingly. For example, when testing a game, and if the game has high retention, if the players spend a lot of time in the game, and you release the game, and you see that the returns are higher than expected, so you can accept higher CPI because you know that you will make more money. So you should look at two sides here. And we didn't see any data about the game, so our the users should be very cheap so that we can develop games. But in hyper casual, our CPI expectations are higher, so we are not planning to make any pre-testing with those games. It also depends on the game and your strategy.
Can Pekin sormuş. Peki
John Pekin asks,
öngörünüzün yanılttığı oluyor mu? Başarılı olmasını beklerken
does it ever happen that the prototype misleads you in your estimations? Yes, in Thief Master, one of our latest games, it was doing very well in the beginning, but then we spent a lot of time to develop the game. We worked on it for 6 weeks. Then we published the game and it was not like what we expected. So this is the risk that we have. And in another game we published in Rooster Games, we had a similar thing. The testing was very good, but after the game was published, of course we do the testing in Facebook, but when you publish the game, you work with 15 or 16 advertising networks, and each of these networks has a different user profile or algorithm. So none of these estimates are 100% accurate. So the results may not be very well. So you can continue to keep the scale low in those games. Umut asks,
anlaşma yapan küçük stüdyoların büyümesine ve profesyonelleşme aşamasına geçişinde verebileceğiniz bir tavsiye var mıdır demiş.
do you have any recommendations to ensure small studios can grow by entering prototype agreements with publishers? Well, this model is quite new. It was not around when hyper casual first came up. This is not something that I personally tested, but when it doesn't happen, you can do better if you look at this as an entrepreneur. Because when I first started this company, we didn't have any money. We couldn't pay the salaries, but we were quite ambitious. And in a short time, we did very good. And so if you don't have this motivation if you have some money and if you're already able to pay your expenses, you lose your motivation. Of course, it's difficult to do something without the money, but I think increasing your risks will make you more aggressive. This is more attractive for me. And also for studios that are working per prototype, when I first started in this industry, I worked with publishers and I learned a lot from them. So try to learn as much as possible. Try to learn how you can do things. And at one point, the studios will be able to publish their own games when they can become self-sufficient. This can be done only by transferring the knowledge from these studios to your own internal in-house teams. During those years, we worked with these studios. We looked at how they worked, what were their systems, how they published these games. And I recommend that you do the same. Thank you very much. The questions were very good. I hope I have been able to help you. And if you have any other questions, anything that you want to know, you can always contact me. I think in our industry, exchange of information is very important. The companies should not be like a closed box. This is not competition. This communication should be improved. Can you hear me? I think we hear you from a different microphone. Yes, my earpod said that's enough. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much for joining us. We really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you. Okay, then I stop sharing my screen. Okay, thank you very much again. Bye.